Japanese pilot landed on wrong deck, realized his stupid mistake when he saw the flag. The Pacific Ocean, 1943. A lone Japanese pilot, disoriented and critically low on fuel after a brutal engagement, spotted a carrier deck through the swirling mist. Relief washed over him. Salvation was at hand. He executed a flawless landing, the tailhook catching the wire with a satisfying thud. But as the engine sputtered to a halt, a chilling realization dawned. The deck crew wore unfamiliar uniforms. The aircraft parked around him bore strange markings. Then he saw it, the stars and stripes snapping proudly from the island superstructure. He hadn't landed on his own ship. He had landed on an American aircraft carrier. His stupid mistake had just handed the enemy an unimaginable intelligence coup. The vast, unforgiving expanse of the Central Pacific in late 1943 was a crucible for naval aviation. Following the pivotal American victory at Midway, the tide had begun to turn, albeit slowly and painfully. Japanese naval air power, once seemingly invincible, was now stretched thin, its veteran pilots and aircraft dwindling with each brutal engagement. American carrier task forces, meanwhile, were growing in strength and experience, refining their tactics and pushing westward, island by bloody island. The specific incident unfolded in the aftermath of a fierce, unnamed carrier battle, a swirling maelstrom of steel and fire that had left both sides battered but unbowed. A persistent low-pressure system had moved in, blanketing the ocean with thick, oppressive cloud cover and intermittent squalls, reducing visibility to mere miles, sometimes even hundreds of yards. This weather, a common adversary in the Pacific, played a crucial role in the unfolding drama. Japanese carrier groups, operating under strict radio silence protocols to avoid detection, were often forced to rely on dead reckoning and celestial navigation, methods notoriously unreliable under adverse weather conditions. The sheer scale of the Pacific theater meant that even minor navigational errors could lead to pilots becoming hopelessly lost, their fuel gauges ticking down to zero over an endless, featureless ocean. American carrier groups, though also facing these challenges, benefited from increasingly sophisticated radar and communication systems, allowing for better coordination and recovery of stray aircraft. The strategic situation was clear. Japan was on the defensive, its supply lines tenuous, its resources finite. The Americans, with their burgeoning industrial might, were relentlessly pressing their advantage. Our protagonist, Lieutenant Kenji Tanaka, was a product of this desperate struggle. At 22 years old, hailing from the coastal prefecture of Shizuoka, Kenji was a graduate of the rigorous Kasumigara Naval Air Group, a prestigious training academy that had once churned out the finest aviators in the world. He had seen extensive combat, flying his A6M Zero fighter from the decks of the carrier Shokaku since the early days of the war. The initial euphoria of victory had long since faded, replaced by a gnawing fatigue and a grim determination. He had witnessed too many friends vanish into the vast blue, too many carriers return with decimated air groups. The pressure was immense, a constant suffocating weight. The deteriorating strategic position of Japan was not lost on him. Every mission felt like a desperate gamble, every sortie a roll of the dice against overwhelming odds. On this particular day, Kenji had been part of a defensive combat air patrol, scrambled to intercept a wave of American dive bombers targeting his carrier group. The engagement had been brutal, a chaotic ballet of tracers and explosions. He had managed to down one Helldiver, but his own Zero had taken several hits, its engines sputtering intermittently, the fuselage peppered with shrapnel. More critically, his fuel tanks had been punctured, and the gauge was dropping at an alarming rate. After the main engagement, he found himself separated from his squadron, disoriented by the thick cloud cover that had rolled in, obscuring the sun and stars. His radio, damaged in the fight, was useless, emitting only static. He was alone, adrift in a world of grey. Desperation began to set in. He circled for what felt like an eternity, his navigation instruments giving conflicting readings, the compass needle swinging wildly. He tried to recall every detail of his training, every landmark, every current, but the ocean offered no familiar reference points. The fuel gauge needle hovered precariously close to E. He knew he had only minutes, perhaps seconds, before his engine would seize. He was preparing himself for the inevitable, the cold embrace of the Pacific, when a sudden, miraculous break in the clouds revealed a sight that made his heart leap. A massive aircraft carrier, its deck a dark, inviting rectangle against the churning sea. Relief, potent and overwhelming, flooded through his exhausted body. It had to be the Shokaku, or perhaps the Zuikaku, one of his sister ships. He didn't question it. He couldn't. His mind, dulled by fatigue and the sheer terror of his predicament, latched onto the image as a drowning man grasps a lifeline. He immediately began his approach, dropping his landing gear, deploying his tailhook. The familiar whine of his engine changed pitch as he reduced throttle, the wind buffeting his damaged Zero. Below, he could make out the tiny figures of the deck crew, their signals appearing, guiding him in. Salvation was moments away. He was committed, too low on fuel for any alternative, his fate sealed by a combination of exhaustion, damage, and the cruel deception of the vast, indifferent ocean. Kenji executed the landing with the precision of a seasoned veteran, a testament to his rigorous training despite his exhaustion. His approach angle was textbook, the damaged Zero settling onto the deck with a controlled descent. He flared just above the stern, the tailhook dropping with a metallic clang. The deck rushed up to meet him, a blur of grey steel. The moment the hook snagged the arresting wire was violent, a sudden, brutal deceleration that slammed him forward against his harness straps. The Zero lurched, its wings wobbling, before jerking to a complete halt in a cloud of spray and rubber. The engine miraculously continued to idle, a low, throaty rumble. A wave of profound relief washed over Kenji, momentarily eclipsing the fatigue and terror that had gripped him for the past hour. He had made it. He was safe. He took a moment, breathing heavily, the adrenaline slowly receding. Then he began to take in his surroundings. Something felt off. The deck layout was subtly different from the Shokaku's. The island superstructure seemed to be on the wrong side, or perhaps he was just disoriented. He looked at the aircraft parked on the deck. Their paint schemes were unfamiliar, a lighter grey, and their markings, not the rising sun. He squinted, trying to make sense of it. Then he saw the deck crew approaching, their movements purposeful. They wore strange, dark blue uniforms, not the khaki or white of his own shipmates. They were shouting, but the words were unintelligible, a harsh, foreign tongue. A cold, creeping dread began to coil in his stomach. This wasn't right. This wasn't his carrier. His heart began to pound, a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. He scanned the deck again, his eyes darting, searching for a familiar sign, a friendly face. And then he saw it. High above the island superstructure, snapping crisply in the Pacific breeze, was a flag. Not the red disk of Japan, but the stars and stripes, the flag of the United States of America. The realization hit him like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that stole his breath. His stupid mistake, exhaustion, desperation, and the fog of war had led him to land on an enemy carrier. The world spun. He had not found salvation. He had found capture, dishonor, and a catastrophic intelligence failure for his homeland. Panic, cold and absolute, flooded through him. He was a prisoner. His aircraft, a precious Zero, would be captured, studied, dissected. Every secret, every vulnerability laid bare for the enemy. The shame was unbearable, a searing brand on his soul. On the deck of the USS Enterprise, the scene unfolded with a mixture of confusion and astonishment. Deck crewmen, initially waving the Japanese pilot in, suddenly froze as they recognized the distinctive lines of the Zero. Shouts of "Enemy plane" and "Don't shoot" erupted simultaneously. Officers on the bridge, alerted by the unusual landing, rushed to the catwalks, their binoculars trained on the bizarre spectacle. Commander John "Jocko" Clark, the Enterprise's air boss, watched in disbelief as the enemy fighter, intact and seemingly undamaged, came to a halt. "Secure that plane! Get a team on that pilot!" he bellowed, his voice cutting through the sudden silence. Marines, weapons drawn, sprinted towards the Zero. Kenji, his mind racing, fumbled for his pistol, intending to destroy his radio and any sensitive documents, perhaps even himself. But before he could act, the cockpit canopy was wrenched open. Strong hands, belonging to burly American sailors, pulled him roughly from his seat. He struggled, shouting in Japanese, but he was quickly overwhelmed. The Zero, still idling, was immediately surrounded. Mechanics and intelligence officers, alerted to the incredible windfall, were already converging. Orders were barked to push the aircraft to the hangar deck for immediate examination. Within minutes, a team of intelligence specialists was on the scene, their faces alight with a mixture of disbelief and professional excitement. The Americans, ever pragmatic, saw not a moment of shame, but an unparalleled opportunity. An intact Zero fighter, a prize beyond measure for technical analysis. An enemy pilot, a potential goldmine of intelligence. The cultural clash was immediate. Kenji, consumed by the dishonor of his capture, wished for death. The Americans, however, saw a valuable asset. Language barriers were quickly addressed. An interpreter, a young ensign who had studied Japanese before the war, was rushed to the scene. Initial interrogation attempts began, even as the Zero was being photographed from every angle, its radio equipment and instruments meticulously documented. Kenji, still reeling, offered only defiance. The capture of Lieutenant Tanaka and his intact A-6M Zero fighter on the deck of the USS Enterprise ignited a flurry of activity within American intelligence circles, transforming a moment of enemy error into a profound strategic advantage. The Zero was immediately transported to a secure facility, likely on an island base like Espiritu Santo or even Pearl Harbor, where engineers from the Naval Air Technical Center and test pilots from the U.S. Navy and Army Air Forces converged. Every rivet, every panel, every system was meticulously examined. They discovered the Zero's surprisingly light construction, its lack of armor protection for the pilot and fuel tanks, and its highly maneuverable but structurally weak wings. Its Sakai engine, while powerful for its weight, revealed vulnerabilities in its fuel system and cooling. Radio frequencies, IFF, identification friend or foe, transponder codes, and instrument panel layouts were all documented. The tactical advantage gained was immediate and profound. American fighter pilots, who had long struggled against the Zero's legendary agility, received urgent briefings. They learned that while the Zero could outturn any American fighter at low speeds, its controls stiffened dramatically at high speeds, making it less maneuverable. The optimal tactic became clear: dive and zoom attacks, avoiding dogfights, using superior speed and firepower. Anti-aircraft gunners were given precise silhouettes and approach patterns of the Zero, improving their targeting. Radio intercept teams, now armed with the actual frequencies and communication protocols from the captured aircraft, could more effectively monitor and decipher Japanese naval aviation chatter, providing invaluable early warnings of enemy movements. Maintenance crews were briefed on the Zero's weak points, learning where to aim for maximum damage. Concurrently, the interrogation of Lieutenant Tanaka began. Initial resistance was fierce, fueled by his deep-seated shame and loyalty. However, skilled interrogators, employing a combination of psychological techniques, exploiting his exhaustion, offering small comforts, and subtly emphasizing the futility of resistance, gradually began to break through. Over weeks, Kenji, though never fully cooperating, inadvertently revealed crucial pieces of information. He spoke of the Shokaku's recent operational areas, the composition of his carrier group, the typical fuel states for long-range missions, and the immense fatigue plaguing Japanese pilots due to relentless operations and insufficient replacements. He described the pressure from command, the deteriorating morale among some of his peers, and the challenges of navigation in the vast Pacific. This information, cross-referenced with signals intelligence, reconnaissance reports, and previous prisoner statements, painted an increasingly accurate picture of Japanese naval capabilities and vulnerabilities. Back in Japan, the failure of Lieutenant Tanaka to return was initially logged as a combat loss. However, when American radio intercepts began to buzz with excited chatter about a captured Zero, an enemy pilot, a chilling suspicion began to spread through Combined Fleet headquarters. The horrifying realization came when intelligence confirmed the unthinkable. One of their elite pilots had landed an intact fighter on an American carrier. Emergency meetings were convened. Admiral Yamamoto's staff, though initially disbelieving, were forced to confront the catastrophic security breach. Orders were immediately issued to change radio frequencies, update IFF codes, and revise navigation procedures. Propaganda attempted to minimize the incident, but operationally, the Japanese command knew they had suffered a severe blow. The concern over what Kenji might have revealed was paramount. The strategic impact rippled across the Pacific. American fighter tactics, adjusted based on the captured Zero's performance data, led to higher kill ratios in subsequent engagements. The psychological impact on American morale was also significant. It reinforced the belief that the enemy, despite their reputation, was fallible and prone to critical errors. This incident starkly highlighted the contrast between the rigid, honor-bound operational security culture of the Japanese and the pragmatic, adaptable intelligence exploitation of the Americans. The Americans saw an opportunity. The Japanese saw an unforgivable shame. The incident of Lieutenant Kenji Tanaka's accidental landing on the USS Enterprise transcended a mere wartime anomaly, evolving into a pivotal moment that contributed to the long-term transformation of the Pacific War. Kenji's fate, like many Japanese prisoners of war, was likely a period of internment in an American POW camp, followed by repatriation to a homeland grappling with defeat and the immense burden of shame. For a Japanese pilot, capture was often considered a fate worse than death, a dishonor that could haunt a man for the rest of his life. The captured Zero, after extensive testing and analysis, became a prized exhibit. It was likely flown by American test pilots for hundreds of hours, its secrets fully extracted, before potentially being preserved in a museum collection, a tangible trophy of intelligence triumph. The technical intelligence gleaned from it was disseminated throughout the Pacific Fleet, shaping air combat doctrine for the remainder of the war. The operational impact was undeniable. American pilots, armed with precise knowledge of the Zero's limitations, achieved significantly higher kill ratios in subsequent engagements. Battles like the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, where hundreds of Japanese aircraft were shot down with minimal American losses, were a direct testament to the effectiveness of these new tactics. Lives were undoubtedly saved because American aviators understood their enemy's capabilities with unprecedented clarity. The incident became a cautionary tale within Japanese naval aviation, emphasizing the critical importance of navigation discipline and the devastating consequences of exhaustion. For the American intelligence community, it served as a prime example of successful opportunity exploitation, a case study in turning an enemy's mistake into a decisive advantage. This starkly contrasted the Japanese shame culture, which often prioritized honor over pragmatic intelligence gathering and adaptation. Post-war, the full story of Kenji Tanaka's landing remained largely classified for decades. As naval archives were declassified and historians delved into the minutiae of the Pacific conflict, the incident slowly came to light. While Kenji's personal identity might have remained anonymous in official records, the event itself became a documented historical fact. Interviews with American sailors who witnessed the surreal landing and the eventual publication of photographs of the captured Zero cemented its place in the annals of naval history. For Kenji, if he survived the war and returned to Japan, the struggle with the shame of capture would have been immense. Japanese society often ostracized those who surrendered, making a return to a normal life incredibly difficult, a tragic outcome for many who endured the war. Conversely, the American intelligence officers who orchestrated the exploitation of this windfall would remember it as a career highlight, a moment when a single, unexpected event provided actionable intelligence that saved lives and accelerated victory. The technical legacy of the captured Zero was profound. Its design elements, particularly its lightweight construction and maneuverability, influenced the development of future American fighter aircraft. Engineers learned both what to emulate and what to avoid. The incident also refined intelligence methods, underscoring the critical importance of technical intelligence and the systematic exploitation of captured enemy equipment for future conflicts. It became institutional knowledge, a blueprint for how to leverage every possible advantage. This incident exemplified how human factors, exhaustion, stress, and navigation error could have strategic consequences far beyond the individual pilot. A single mistake cascaded into a significant intelligence failure for Japan, providing the Americans with invaluable insights. It highlighted the contrast between the rigid, often inflexible, operational culture of the Japanese and the adaptive, pragmatic approach of the Americans. The human cost of war extended beyond the combat itself, encompassing the psychological burden of failure and dishonor. In conclusion, the stupid mistake of one exhausted Japanese pilot proved that even the elite aviators of the Imperial Japanese Navy were human and fallible under extreme operational pressure. It demonstrated that the American intelligence apparatus was sophisticated enough to exploit every opportunity, no matter how improbable. The Pacific War was ultimately won, not just through industrial might, but through superior intelligence and tactical adaptation. Kenji Tanaka's accidental landing, a small but significant contribution to the American war effort, underscored how the outcome of war is determined by the accumulation of countless small advantages, ruthlessly identified and exploited. If you found this untold story of World War II fascinating, imagine what other hidden histories lie beneath the surface. Subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the Pacific War, uncovering the pivotal moments and human stories that shaped history. What other WPUT stories would you like us to explore? Let us know in the comments below and join our community as we continue to explore the incredible, often overlooked chapters of this global conflict.